Marhaba, my friends. Welcome back to the journey. For this episode, we're going to showcasing an innovative technology, Electrochromic. Basically, it's a color-changing glass, which helps you fend off the sunshines and all the heat in-house or in the vehicle. Actually, Ambilight is one of our portfolio companies. Truly disruptive technology. We are its Series A leading institutional investors. Back then, it was only a startup. But for now, the company has managed to secure the spot of a sector champion. Successfully got into prominent automobile OEMs like NIO, BYD, Geely, Zeekr. So, let's kick it off.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're taking a look at Ambilight.
Ambilight.
They specialize in this really cool tech, electrochromic thin film technology.
Yeah, really interesting stuff.
We want to see if they can actually shake things up and take on the big players like Gentex.
Right.
So get ready to explore this tech with us.
Yeah, and figure out just how much potential it really has.
Exactly.
So Ambilight, they were founded back in 2017.
Okay.
And basically what they do is they produce these electrochromic thin films.
Okay.
They operate out of both China and the US.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they're really targeting these three big industries. Automotive, consumer electronics, and building glass.
Makes sense. I mean, those are the industries where you would think this type of technology would really shine.
Yeah. But here's the thing. They're technically a tier 2 supplier.
Okay.
Now, what that means is they supply parts to other companies who then work with, let's say, car manufacturers. Right.
But they actually operate a bit differently.
That's what I was going to ask about, because that car companies are super involved in Ambilight's product, like validation and procurement. So why is that?
It's all about the tech. You see, their technology is really unique, and it's really, really sought after. So these auto companies see the potential, and they basically treat Ambilight like a tier 1 supplier.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this close collaboration, it does a couple things for Ambilight.
Okay.
One, it validates their technology.
Right.
And two, it could really lead to much faster market penetration.
So they're kind of like skipping the line, going straight to the big leagues.
Pretty much.
That's really impressive for a company that's relatively new.
It is.
But okay, before we go any further, let's break it down. What is this electrochromic thin film technology?
Okay, so imagine a window.
Okay, got it.
But this window can change its tint, like how dark or light it is.
Like at the flip of a switch or something.
Exactly.
That's cool. And that is basically the magic of electrochromic technology.
Okay.
It works based on this electrochemical reaction, kind of similar to how lithium-ion batteries work.
Really?
But instead of storing energy, it changes the color of the glass.
So I'm picturing like a window that can go from clear to dark instantly. No more blinds.
Right.
But what makes Ambilight different?
The key here is how they use a solid electrolyte.
Solid electrolyte, okay.
A lot of other companies, like Gentex, they use liquid electrolytes.
Okay.
It might seem like a small difference, but trust me, it has huge EE implications.
I'm all ears. Tell me why.
So with solid electrolytes, you get better production yield,
Okay.
which means lower costs.
Got it.
Plus, it lets Ambilight make their technology in a flexible film format.
So it's not limited to just windows then.
Exactly.
This is where it gets really interesting. So what are some real-world applications we can expect?
Okay, picture this. Car rear view mirrors that automatically dim when there are headlights behind you.
Ooh, I like that.
Or sunroofs in cars that can change from transparent to shaded to help keep the car cool.
That's a game changer, especially with how hot it gets in some places.
Absolutely. And this document also talks about how Ambilight's already working with a big smartphone company to develop electrochromic phone covers.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. So a phone cover that can go from clear to opaque for privacy. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop there. Think about AR glasses with lenses that can adjust their transparency as needed.
That's next level stuff.
Yeah.
So we've got this potentially revolutionary tech with a bunch of applications, but what about the market? Is the world ready for this?
The world is more than ready. I mean, just look at China's car market. It's growing so fast.
That's true.
And globally, everyone's looking for ways to save energy in buildings and vehicles.
Yeah.
And we can't forget about consumer electronics. Those folks are always looking for the next big thing.
They are. So we know people want this, but do we have any numbers to back it up?
We do.
Yeah.
Just in China alone, they estimate that the market for electrochromic rearview mirrors could hit 6 million units.
Wow, that's huge.
That's just one application in one country. Imagine the possibility.
So if Ambilight gets even a small piece of that market, it would be a game changer.
Definitely.
And it looks like they're not just stopping at cars.
Right.
Some pilot projects, electrochromic building glass, right?
Yeah, they're testing it out at Princeton University and the Shanghai Huajian Group.
Really? So it's not just an idea, they're actually putting it to work.
Exactly. And the early feedback has been very positive.
That's awesome. So it seems like they've got everything. Amazing tech, a receptive market, and they're thinking outside the box. But what makes them different from everyone else out there? It can't just be about cost.
You're right. While being cost-effective is a huge plus, Ambilight has other advantages as well.
Okay, like what?
Their solid electrolyte technology really gives them a leg up.
In what way?
Well, compared to other technologies like SPD or PDSC, their tech can change color faster.
Oh, wow.
And it offers a wider range of transparency levels.
Okay.
And on top of that, they've got lower haze values. That means you get a much clearer view.
So they're cheaper and they have better tech.
Exactly.
That has to be really appealing to companies looking to add this type of tech to their products.
It is. And that leads us to the big question, can they take on Gentex?
Gentex is like the king of this whole industry.
Right.
Can Ambilight really challenge them?
Well, let's look at the facts. It shows that Ambilight has a lower shipping price,
Okay.
much faster development time,
Got it.
and they need way less money to invest in production assets compared to Gentex.
Wow. And let's not forget how close they are to the automakers.
Exactly.
Having that direct connection has to give them an edge.
It does. And here's another interesting thing.
Right.
A lot of these OEMs and other suppliers, they're looking for alternatives.
To Gentex.
Yeah, because traditionally, Gentex's prices have been pretty high.
So Ambilight is stepping in at the perfect time.
It seems that way.
Better product, more efficient process, and the market wants a change. But how are they approaching all of this strategically?
So their main focus is on securing deals, specifically with top brands, both in the automotive and the consumer electronics industries.
That makes sense. Get your foot in the door with the big players.
Right. Their goal is to really establish themselves in the market through innovative applications of their tech.
So are they actually succeeding?
They are. In fact, they've already got contracts for over 10 EV models from some pretty big names: NIO, Geely Zeekr, BYD, and Chang'an Avatar.
That's a pretty impressive list for a company that's so new. They're not just talking the talk, they're walking the walk.
They are. They're still in their early stages, but they've got the tech, they've got their cost effectiveness, and now these partnerships. It paints a very interesting picture. They could be a major disruptor in the making.
Absolutely. So they have the tech, the market, and the plan. What's next for them?
Well, they're already working on their 4th generation products.
Oh, wow. Even more advanced.
Yeah.
What are they going to be capable of?
So they're trying to combine transparent displays, sensing capabilities, and ITO technology. Basically, they want to create a film that can turn any piece of glass into a smart surface.
Hold on. So you're saying they could potentially turn a window into something that displays information and responds to touch?
Precisely. Imagine a car windshield that shows you information, or a window in your home that acts like a giant touchscreen.
That sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, but it might be closer than we think.
That's incredible. Ambilight is really pushing the limits with this technology.
They are, and that's why it's so exciting to watch what they do next.
Okay, so just to recap, Ambilight is this young company, but they have huge goals.
Yeah.
They've developed this game-changing technology.
Yeah.
It's both cost-effective and better than what's already out there. And they're targeting big markets and making strategic moves to become a major player.
Definitely.
It really seems like they could disrupt the entire industry.
Yeah, there's a ton of potential there.
And what's really cool is they're looking beyond just rearview mirrors. They want to change how we interact with glass in our homes, cars, everywhere.
For sure.
But before we go any further, I think we need to look closer at the technology itself.
Okay.
We've mentioned SPD and PDLC a couple times, but we haven't really explained them.
Right.
How does Ambilight's approach stack up against those?
Let's dive into that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so SPD and PDLC.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
All right. SPD stands for Suspended Particle Devices.
Okay.
It's been used in some, high-end applications.
Okay.
But it does have some drawbacks.
So it is.
Well, to keep the glass transparent, you need a constant power supply.
Oh, I see.
And it can also have a higher haze value.
So it's not as clear.
Right.
So you're basically stuck with either high energy consumption or a less clear view.
Yeah, kind of a trade-off there.
What about PDLC then?
So PDLC stands for Polymer Dispersed Liquid Crystal.
Okay.
It's really good at switching between transparent and opaque states.
Quickly.
Yeah, really quickly. But you don't have a lot of control over the level of transparency.
So it's either on or off.
Pretty much. No in between.
Got it. So it sounds like Ambilight found a good middle ground with their solid electrolyte approach.
They really did. They've addressed a lot of the limitations those older technologies had.
And when you combine that with lower costs and the flexible film format, it makes sense why everyone's so interested.
Yeah.
Their production process is a big reason why they're saving so much money.
Right. So they use this roll-to-roll continuous printing and slit extrusion coating technology.
That sounds complicated.
It is a bit technical, but think of it like printing a newspaper, just on a massive scale.
Okay, so it's a highly efficient process for making these films.
Exactly. High capacity, they use the materials really well, and there's less waste.
Which all leads to lower costs.
Exactly.
Which means a cheaper product for the consumer and probably a higher chance of wider adoption.
Makes sense, right?
Definitely. And it's more environmentally friendly, too.
Oh, yeah. Less waste is always a good thing.
For sure. It seems like they've really thought about everything, from the materials to how they manufacture it.
They have. That focus on efficiency is impressive.
And speaking of efficiency, it's all the testing they do.
Oh, yeah.
It says their electrochromic glass can last like 20 years.
That's right. It goes through a ton of testing.
Like what?
Environmental endurance, impact resistance. They even test it with xenon lamps and salt fog to see how it handles corrosion.
Wow. Sounds intense. And it passes.
It does. It's not just durable. It's also got great performance.
Like what?
It changes color in just a few seconds.
Yeah.
It has a wide transparency range and uses very little power.
So we know it's cheaper and more efficient to make. It lasts a long time and works really well. No wonder they're getting all these contracts with big companies.
It's a winning combination.
Okay, so we talked about the tech itself, but let's zoom out a bit and talk about the market. You mentioned Gentex is the big competitor, but are there others?
Well, Gentex is definitely the main one in the anti-glare rearview mirror market.
Okay.
But there's another company to keep in mind, Magna.
Magna.
Yeah, they're a global automotive supplier, but they're not as focused on this specific tech as Gentex is.
Got it. So Ambilight's basically up against two giants.
They are, but, David did beat Goliath.
True.
And Ambilight has some big advantages. Their technology is better, they make it more efficiently, and their prices are more competitive.
Plus, we talked about how they're working directly with the automakers.
Right.
But it's still a huge challenge going up against Gentex.
Definitely.
And it's not just about Gentex either, right? They're also looking at consumer electronics and building glass.
Absolutely. And each of those markets has its own set of competitors.
Right. Like who?
Well, in the building glass market, you have companies like View Dynamic and Saint-Gobain. And in consumer electronics, that's a whole different ballgame.
I bet.
You've got Apple, Samsung.
All the big names.
Yeah. Ambilight's going to have to be really smart about how they approach these different markets.
That makes sense. They need the right products, the right partners, and a solid strategy.
Exactly.
It sounds like navigating these markets is just as important as having great technology.
I got it.
So they can't just rely on the tech alone to win.
No, they need to be smart. And that's where their partnerships and focus on innovation really come in.
So they're working closely with these big brands to create customized solutions.
That's right.
It's like they're integrating themselves into these different industries instead of trying to compete head on.
I like that analogy. It's a smarter approach.
But that means they need to really understand each market, right? And figure out how to adapt their technology.
They do.
So how are they doing that?
Well, they have a strong research and development team. They have a lot of experience. They're not just selling a product, they're selling a solution, a partnership.
Makes sense. Okay, we've talked about the technology, the competition, and their strategy.
Right.
But what's the long-term plan? Where do they see themselves in, say, 5 or 10 years?
It's hard to say for sure.
Okay, like what?
Remember that fourth generation technology we mentioned? The one that combines transparent displays, sensing, and ITO.
Yeah, the smart glass stuff.
Right. That seems to be their big vision for the future.
Turning every surface into a screen. It's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. Imagine buildings adjusting how much energy they use based on the weather, or cars talking to each other to avoid traffic.
It would change everything.
It really would. And that's why we need to start thinking about what this means now.
Before it's too late.
Well, before things move too fast, we need to make sure this technology is developed responsibly.
It reminds me of that scene in Minority Report where the ads are personalized just for Tom Cruise's character.
Oh, yeah.
Could we see something like that with Ambilights tech?
It's definitely possible.
Which brings us back to privacy concerns.
Exactly.
If everything can see and hear us, how do we protect our information?
That's a big question that needs to be addressed. Ambilight and any other company working on this, they have to make privacy and security a top priority.
It's not just up to them, though, right?
No, consumers need to be aware, too.
So we can't just sit back and let whatever technology comes along take over.
Right. We have to be informed and ask questions.
We have to be vocal about our concerns.
Exactly. What consumers want matters. It can decide whether a technology succeeds or fails.
That's why I love doing these deep dives. It's not just about learning cool stuff. It's about understanding what it all means.
I agree.
The good and the bad.
And helping people make informed decisions.
Exactly.
Knowledge is power, that's for sure.
Especially in a world where technology is everywhere.
Definitely.
But before we get too philosophical, let's talk about one more thing.
Oh.
The team behind Ambilight.
Okay.
The people who started the company and some of their key team members.
Yeah, it does.
And there's something really interesting about them.
What's that? They're not just business people.
Okay.
These are scientists, engineers, inventors.
So they really know their stuff.
They do. They understand this tech at a really deep level.
That makes sense.
And they're passionate about it.
Oh, I bet. Pushing the boundaries, seeing what's possible.
Exactly. And you can tell that they're not just in this for the money.
Yeah, you get that feeling reading about them.
It's like they really believe in what they're doing. They think this technology can make the world a better place.
It's definitely a powerful combination. The knowledge, the passion, and the commitment.
It is. And it shows.
In what way?
In their products, their partnerships, their whole vision for the future.
It sounds like they're building something really special.
They are. It's not just a company. It's more like a legacy.
That's inspiring.
It is.
Yeah.
It reminds us that innovation isn't just about technology.
Right.
It's about people.
Having a vision.
The passion to make it happen.
And having a team that's all in.
Exactly. And that's what they have at Ambilight. This team of incredibly talented people, all dedicated to making a difference.
It's still early for Ambilight, but I have a feeling we're going to be hearing a lot more from them.
I think so, too. They're definitely one to watch.
They are. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about Ambilight's tech, the market they're in, their vision for the future.
We've also touched on some of the challenges and things to think about with such a game-changing technology.
But there's one more thing I want to bring up.
What's that?
We've talked about how Ambilight could change industries. But what about our lives?
Yeah, how will this technology change how we live day to day?
If every surface becomes a screen or a sensor constantly feeding us information.
It's a big question. Imagine your windows showing you the news in the morning.
Okay.
Or your windshield talking to traffic lights to find the best route. This technology could change how we connect with each other, how we work, even how we spend our free time.
It's exciting, but also a little scary to think about. It's like we're living in a sci-fi movie. It reminds me of that scene in Minority Report where Tom Cruise is walking through the mall.
Oh, yeah.
And all the ads are personalized just for him.
I remember that scene.
Could we see something like that happen with Ambilight's technology?
I mean, it's not impossible. And that's why it's so important to talk about these things now.
Before it's too late.
Before it's too late, to make sure this technology is used in a good way.
That makes sense. And it brings us back to those important questions we talked about earlier. Privacy, accessibility, and sustainability.
Right. We need to make sure this technology doesn't create more problems than it solves.
It's a big responsibility.
It is. For Ambilight and any company working on this type of technology. But it's not just up to them.
What do you mean?
Consumers need to be informed, too. They need to ask questions.
We can't just blindly accept whatever new technology comes along.
Exactly. We have to be part of the conversation.
And make our voices heard.
Exactly. What consumers want can have a big impact.
Right. It can make or break a technology.
Yeah.
And that's why we do these deep dives, to help people understand the big picture.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right?
It is. And in a world where technology is advancing so quickly, it's more important than ever. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive on Ambilight, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away?
I think the big takeaway is this. This electrochromic technology, especially Ambilight's approach, it has the potential to revolutionize things. But it's on all of us, companies, consumers, policymakers, to make sure it's used responsibly and ethically for everyone's benefit.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've covered a lot today.
We have.
The technology itself, the market, their long-term vision, and even some of the ethical considerations.
A fascinating company.
They really are. Ambilight has big goals, incredible technology, and a team that wants to make a positive impact on the world. But how it all plays out, how this technology shapes our future, that's still being decided.
And everyone has a part to play in that.
Exactly. Keep asking questions, stay informed, and be mindful of the technology you choose to support.
Well said.
That's all for today's deep dive, everyone. Until next time.